Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Arts and Letters at UCR Palm Desert. I am Todd Goldberg. I am the director of the Graduate School in Creative Writing and Writing for the Performing Arts, as the sign says. The sign's been falling a lot lately, so if it falls, you're going to get to see a picture of my grandfather. That's what's behind that, and a speaker. Every year we host Arts and Letters in person at UCR Palm Desert, and we bring out the very best authors in the world for our friends and family and partners in the Coachella Valley. The cool thing about all of us being stuck at home is we get to open it up to everyone around the world, and so we're so happy to see you here tonight. Everything that we do for Arts and Letters is always free. And it's free because we believe that no one should lose out on the chance to interact with literature because they can't afford it. I believe that the arts and reading is the most important thing. And so for as long as we do Arts and Letters, it will always be free to each and every one of you. That is our pledge. That is my election pitch to you, that I will always have Arts and Letters for free. And this is actually our official fall kickoff of, I think this is our 12th year of doing Arts and Letters. And so it's great fun for all of us. We're going to have a bunch of events, but we're also going to do a lot of other little events over the course of this academic year that we wouldn't normally do. So we've just partnered up with the Horror Writers of America. We're going to do an event with them in November. And so if you get your emails from us about different events and stuff, you're going to see a lot of stuff popping up that we're doing, because we're trying to be as active as we possibly can, because it's fun to do this stuff. And it turns out, with all of us at home, so much more free time. So much more. I've never been busier. Tonight, however, I am so pleased to introduce you to a writer that, if you don't know, you're going to know very well by the end of this evening. She is one of my favorite crime writers. She is Rachel Howzell Hall. She has a brand new book, And Now She's Gone, which came out about a month ago. It's been getting rave reviews everywhere. Rachel's been in this weird place for about the last 4 years, where every time a new book comes out, they say she is the biggest new thing you've ever heard of. But now they don't say that, because now she's just as big as thing. She's here. She's arrived. So now you don't get to be the hot new thing. You're just hot.
I don't know. My brand is always starting over.
Well, this new book of hers is absolutely remarkable. It has a brand new character. She had written a series character before. We'll talk about that. But if you're sitting at home and you want a complicated, funny, surprisingly funny, we'll get to that, dark, violent, sexy, strange novel of California and the South, but also of the mind, and a book that you will literally not have the answers to until the very last page. Folks, And Now She's Gone is your book. It's an absolute thrilling page turner. I don't just say that because she's here. I absolutely love this book, and I think you will too. Rachel Howzell Hall, ladies and gentlemen. Woo!
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
It's so wonderful to see your face and to be able to talk about your book. Well, let's get into it.
Okay.
You know, the thing that I have always loved about your books is, you know, you write about real people. You've always imbued your mysteries, whether you're writing about murder or anything else, with the sense that you're writing about people that you could meet at the grocery store or at the CVS or whatever. Did you always know that when you were writing that you were attempting to make it feel like the real world?
Yes, that is, first of all, again, thank you for inviting me. I am so honored to be here. And thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight, and coming out and turning this way instead of that way. I like writing about regular people because we're all here. We're all regular, no matter how gifted some of us are, like you, Todd. You are a regular person. And like we were talking just moments ago about the romper room lady, only regular people do things like that. You don't have to be the brightest star in your universe to be terribly interesting and to be terribly conflicted and just totally jacked up. And I find that fascinating. And you just look around and you're like, oh, she has a problem with this. He can't do that. Why is she wearing that thing over there? Everybody has secrets
Right.
Everyone has nicks. I find that fascinating. And those are the people I want to write about. I don't like, um, well, if you think you're perfect, I want to find that thing that you've been hiding from all of us. And
Right.
I want to carve that out and make you a character. And I want to make you fallible. And I'm committed to that kind of character. I like kind of stripping away, the things that we put on to look fancy. Like right now I have on, this nice shirt that I got from the Express and lipsticks, but my llama socks are dirty and with dog hair and cat hair, and I like those kind of contradictions
Right.
that we carry with us every day.
Were you a suspicious child? Were
Yeah,
you poking around and looking through stuff as a kid?
very quiet. I was the word nerd. I was the bookworm. I was the kid that would kind of disappear into
Hmm.
books, and people would, oh, she's sleeping, or oh, she's reading. And I may have been, but I'm also listening, and I'm
Right.
looking, and I kept journals. I was the kid that would, I
Oh.
still have all my journals that I started in fourth grade up until maybe a year or two after college. And I have them all. And I've recorded conversations and things that my parents said to each other, and my relationship with my sister and my brothers, and, wishy-washy friends, the whole seventh through 12th grade.
Right.
Those were just crazy. But I was that observant kid who listened to how people threw words at each other and, violated each other. And some of it scared me,
Hmm.
but I was always fascinated by it. I didn't want to be off in the drama. I just wanted to chronicle the drama. So yeah, I was a nosy kid. I'm still nosy in some ways when, something happens, the intrigue of the neighborhood,
Right.
go and look and see what's going on. I go on next door.
I'm an active next door troll, as you know.
Yes. Yes, I know. I saw your thing today. Well, yeah, it's like drama lives there. And, if we never have to step out of our house again to get drama, just go on to next door because
It
it's
is.
all there.
It's the darkest place that I've ever visited in my entire
Yes.
life.
Yes,
I
it
don't
is.
ever want to meet in person any of my neighbors, which I should probably stop interacting with them there.
Yeah.
Um, when you were growing up, and people would say, oh, that's something that we'll talk about when you're an adult. Were you writing that stuff down in your journal
Yeah.
and then like calling your mom when you were 40 and being like, all right, mom,
So what's
fall
the deal?
1976?
Although, as a parent now, I kind of get the holding on to secrets thing. I don't have any
Mm,
with my daughter. I don't think I have any right now, at least something that I would say dark family secret. But
right.
yeah, I remember, the whispered conversations and the weighted conversations of, my parents not saying that one thing while we're in the room, but
Right.
there's something there. And, we eventually we found those things out, and they are, incredibly dramatic. And a lot of those types of secrets you don't want to write about because, okay, people are still alive.
Right.
And how will your people deal with something like that? But, with all my stories, my family life is somehow in there, good
Mhm.
and bad. We were a very strange bunch. We were working class, but my parents were incredibly aspirational. And so we were in these spaces that we wouldn't have been in if my mom hadn't found like free opportunities in the newspaper. We
Right.
took art classes and music classes at USC. We couldn't afford USC, but she found this, you know, go to USC for free, or, things like that.
Mhm.
So it was a weird upbringing. We were
Were your
smart
parents
kids.
readers?
um, my mom was. My dad read, but he was a writer. He told stories. He was in
Oh,
Toastmasters and wrote great speeches.
Toastmasters, my
Yeah,
God.
Toastmasters. And we go up and down the state of California for his speech contests. I
Right.
remember, my siblings and I, we didn't get to go to the Velvet Turtle for all the contests, but you remember the Velvet Turtle?
Yes. The Velvet Turtle.
Yes, so fancy, so fancy.
Yeah, that was
So
too fancy for kids.
yes,
No
we
kids in the
didn't
Velvet
get to go
Turtle.
to this, but we certainly were at the Red Lion Inn in San Jose at had a speech contest. So, it was strange growing up where I grew up in the jungle in the Crenshaw area, but, driving up in our Fury to go to the Red
There's a
Lion.
good metaphor, right?
And I think that's why my books are so weird like that, because
Mhm.
my upbringing was not just this one thing,
Right.
and so I can't be one thing because, I grew up Seventh Day Adventist, but my dad smoked and drank, and we watched TV on Friday night.
So you're like a Fourth Day Adventist.
Exactly. So it's like it was. I played in a handbell choir for
Mhm.
church. So yeah, I think I write what I write, and I've had problems up until now. Well, now meaning 2014 when I got the book deal with Forge,
Mhm.
of editors saying, "Okay, this is kind of weird because you're straddling all kinds of genres,
Right.
but we like it and we like the voice." It took me a long time after my first book deal in 2002 to land another one because of how strange and
Well,
different this
but
was.
it's not even really that it's strange. It's that, you're taking essentially, in my view,
Mhm.
I'm gonna put on my book critic hat,
Yes.
is that you're taking things from different genres. You're taking characterization from literary fiction,
Mhm.
and you are putting it into, in your earlier books, sort of, straight police procedurals,
Right.
and they don't always mesh up to the reader's expectations. I mean, they're messed up to mine. I loved them.
Yeah.
But if you're just picking it up thinking, "Oh, this is just gonna be cop talk,"
Yeah.
well, it's not that's not what it is.
Right. No.
And an editor who only does cop books is not gonna realize like, "Oh, this is smarter. These are people talking about their problems."
Yeah.
You
Right.
know?
In between all that, yeah, like in the earlier days, I had the term upmarket. It's too
Mhm.
upmarket for this thing over there. And even now, there's some readers who are picking up And Now She's Gone, thinking it's like this straight kind of gone girl, not even Gone Girl, but the typical kind of domestic suspense
Mhm.
thing with the cheating husband, those books. And it's
Right.
not, and they're like, "Well, this isn't that." And it's like, "Well, I didn't say it was." I remember one review for Land of Shadows, and a woman gave it 1 star because this isn't Christian fiction. And I'm like, "Bitch, I never said it was. Where does it say Christian
I
fiction?"
gotta tell you, Rachel, it's never been a critique of my work.
Uh, this isn't Jewish fiction. There's a rabbi, and he's a
But what's funny is, for the audience here, for the aspiring writers in the audience, oftentimes you'll get an email from someone saying, "Well, I am struck dumb by the violence in your book." And be like, "Well, you bought a book called Gangsterland."
I'm dead. Right. Right. Or there's language. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I killed like 17 people in the first. That doesn't bother you,
I
but
killed 17 people and a dog. And you're
right.
like, "You said
But
shit."
I said shit. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think, I'm leaning more into what my true voice is. I mean, a part of becoming a writer is figuring out what is your voice. And mine is a very, African American in the term, in meaning it's like okra or gumbo, where
Mhm,
it's a little this and a little that, a little that, and that's a uniquely American voice.
mhm.
And it takes a while to get there.
I agree. I agree. But I think, you're hitting it just the right time. I mean, you've been the hot new thing, like I said, for like a decade. And now that you've arrived, people are finally right where you're supposed to be. So when did you decide like you're gonna stop consuming literature and you're going to start creating literature outside of just writing your journals?
I wanted to, but it was kind of like a dream. It's like marrying Nick Rhodes from Duran Duran for me. It's like, I'd like to be a writer and marry Nick Rhodes, so it was kind of very over there. It was, and it wasn't until I got my first real job at Penn Center USA West, where
Mhm.
I met working writers and working Black writers. And I met Gary Phillips there,
Oh, great writer. Yeah.
and Jervy Turlon and BB Moore Campbell. And I
Mhm.
actually got to see Black folks doing this thing called writing novels. And they weren't Toni Morrison and Alice Walker. And
Right.
did write these cool kind of genre books. And that's when I started my first, because I actually saw it happening. And I
Hmm.
saw that they had, regular working lives, and they did this thing over there. And that's when it's like, okay, I can actually do this. Now, what is it I'm going to write? So, yeah, it took me seeing it and actually believing
Wow,
it
that's really
instead of,
interesting. So you're already like an established adult human being.
yeah.
Do you think that gave you more or less confidence? Like if you had tried to do it when you were 19 or something, would you have been overwhelmed by the process? Or by doing it when you were an adult, did it allow you to say, well, I've fucked up other things and then succeeded. I can do
well,
this.
well, fortunately, I was still 24.
Hmm.
So I was still, I can do anything I want. And I actually kind of believed it. And I
Hmm.
went into it thinking it was easier than what I thought.
Right.
I bought, because this was 94, I bought that big book that had all the agents and editors. You remember that?
Yes, the writer's market.
Yeah, the
Yes.
writer's market. And it's like, I'll just flip through and find the agent for me. And
Oh
it was
God, that I would
harder.
buy that book every year, like from literally like from age 24 to 30.
Uh-huh. I
Every year
still
I'd buy
have
the
my
new
copy
book.
over there. I still have my copy over there. And but you think, oh, this is all they want, and oh, they represented that book. That book kind of sucks. I can do better. And so, yeah, 24, you're a little cocky, and then you realize this is actually kind of harder. And then back then, they were looking for specific types of Black voices,
Right.
and that wasn't my voice. My first
Particularly in crime fiction.
it was,
I mean,
and it
let's just
wasn't.
let's just be clear. When you were 24, there were not a bunch of Black crime writers.
No, I don't even think
Very few. There
Walter
was
had.
Gary and Walter Mosley,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, basically. And and if you're a woman, a Black woman, it's
Right.
like, okay, that's not my reality either.
Right.
And so, yeah, no, my very first book, A Quiet Storm, I got a great publisher. Scribner published it in trade paperback. But then, after that, it's like, yeah, we're looking for like the Sister Soldier type urban, very East Coast
Right.
Black life. And that, that is not me. Even though I did grow up in, the poor neighborhood or whatever, it didn't look like Chicago. It
Right.
didn't look like, even when I was doing promotion for Land of Shadows, I had a UK publisher, Titan, and they sent over the Times UK to do this whole story on me. And I took the photographer where I grew up, and he's like, "This is it?" And it's like, yeah, but Los Angeles, there are palm trees,
Right.
and like my older brother says, even the ugly people in Los Angeles are beautiful. And so he wasn't convinced. He's like, "This isn't bad." I'm like, "Okay, I'll leave you here tonight, and we'll see how you feel about that." So yeah, so there was some challenge there,
Mhm.
getting.
That sort of shows up in Now She's Gone, where the doctor Ian warns
Yes,
your detective, oh, it's a rough area,
yeah,
and it's
be
just
careful.
basically an area where there's more African Americans than white people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's like, well, that's not what it fits into what my notion of what it is to be in a Black area is.
Right.
So yeah, so you're kind of boxing against all that. But in those times, those many years, that was like basically my entire 30s,
Mhm.
where I was trying to get a book deal and failing, I kept writing. And 30s suck, because that's where that's where you do a lot of your living. Your parents are getting older, you're getting older, you probably are in some type of relationship, the house, career, babies, all of it. You're kind of doing that in your 30s. And so I learned a lot.
Mhm.
I've experienced lots of trauma in my 30s. But for writers, you take all that, it's all content, and now what it means to be scared and fearful and angry and disappointed and joyous,
Mhm.
and it infuses into your writing. And now, by the time I got a book deal with Land of Shadows, I had done some living.
Mhm.
I knew how to make Lou this woman who has it all together here, but disappointed in this area over here, because that was me.
Mhm.
I mean, even for, and now she's gone, Grayson is far less, experienced than Gray, but she goes into work and she's insecure and she has her nicks and she makes mistakes. And even now, I'm still doing that. So
Well,
yeah,
and I've always felt like from your first books on that you've always written primarily about identity more than anything else. You
yeah,
know, I mean, it's really true in the new book,
yeah.
obviously. Everyone in your new book has 4 or 5 lives they've already lived,
Mhm.
often with different names,
Yeah.
which we'll get to in a sec. But you've always written about a person who is one thing to one person and another thing to another person, and that other thing to the other person is often very violent.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
so it strikes me that you are compelled by the notion of like what is that thing that pushes that person
Mhm.
to that other side to
Yeah.
become that violent entity. Is that true?
Yeah, it is because again, looking back on our own relationships, on my own relationships, family, friends, community, I I mean, I do that. For instance, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was diagnosed with breast cancer,
Mhm.
but you wouldn't have known it because I went to work every day. I had all my surgeries, and the 3 days they're like, you should stay home. After those 3 days, I was back at work. And if you didn't know,
Rachel.
I know, but it was that sense of I need to control this. I need
Right.
to not be. I want to be distracted. I don't want to think about it. If I go to work, then that means I'm normal. Everything's okay. And I was 33, and this wasn't supposed to happen to me. Young 33, married, baby. It was supposed to be great. And
Right.
that's not what happened. And so I want all my characters to have that they think I'm okay, but I'm a wreck inside.
Right.
Because especially now, everybody we get on screen and everyone's, we're here. Yes, I'm here. I'm off mute and it's all great.
I'm
And
off mute.
right. And all kind of craziness. Not even talking about the world, just your house. It's just crazy. And a lot of us like want to burst out crying. I cried today because, my day job is it's very demanding. And it's so much. And they threw one thing at me, and it's like, oh my God, really? It's just endless. And I just had to just do this. But by the time my boss is like, are you okay? I'm
Mhm.
fine. It's great. It's great.
But
So,
how do you as a as a person who's got deadlines and has to write books and has a life and a family and all these things, how are you able to compartmentalize enough to come and do this,
yeah,
right? But then also on tomorrow when you're done doing this to go and sit down and knock out 1,500 words. Like
right.
how mentally are you able to turn off those switches?
I can, because I think especially for women, that's what we do all the time. I remember when when I became a mom, and I was no longer Rachel Howzell Hall. I was Maya's mom. Oh, hey, Maya's mom. And, you're now charged with doing art classes and going in and being this sweet person and being patient as kids touch you. And I hate that. But I needed to do that for my daughter. And, so we all kind of create these personas,
Mhm,
the one for your family, the one for your faith when you go to church or synagogue or whatever. You're
mhm.
not, who you were with your siblings in Vegas.
Right.
Then you're very responsible
Specifically
one
for
for
me.
them. Yeah, right. Um, so I think what I'm doing is what we're all kind of doing. More, I'm doing it high level, definitely,
Mhm.
because here I am, and I've been up since 4:55 this
Oy
morning.
vey.
Yeah, because that's when I write. I get
Mhm.
up to write, and then before going to work. And so, yeah, I just do it only because I have to do it. If I want this writing thing, which is my heart,
Mhm.
behind my kid and my family, of course, but if I want this, then I need to create this persona that can actually do it, rather than, where I want to be on the couch right now playing Fallout 76 on. No, that's another one. So yeah, if it's something that you want, then you kind of create that space so that
Right.
you
You
can.
always have time for the things you really want to do.
Yeah, like if I wanted to be 120 pounds right now, then I work out. I'm not interested in that because I either want to write, sleep, work, or play Fallout,
Fudge.
right?
Right.
It's not a
Well,
it's not a value for me.
right. Well, let's talk a bit about the new book specifically,
Mhm.
because it's a lot about what you're talking about. Obviously, you've got this great new character that you're introducing in this book. She is a private investigator, but not of the Sam Spade variety. She's new at her job. She's not quite great at it yet. She
No.
doesn't know when she's being overwhelmed. She makes mistakes.
Mhm.
I love a hero who makes mistakes. I
Yeah.
love a hero like,
And
I
your
mean,
books are
maybe it
totally
goes back
that.
to, like, the Rockford Files. Like Jim Rockford would get the crap kicked out of him every
Yeah.
episode. Love
Every
that. Like someone would beat him up and toss his trailer. Um, and so your main character makes mistakes, but she also has this sort of brutal past that she's running from, while at the same time kind of running to,
uh-huh.
in the choice of the jobs that she's taking. And she is looking for a woman who has disappeared, who it seems from the beginning that she has run away from an abusive relationship.
Mhm.
Um, but the word seems, like, you could write 20 books about the word seems, right? Tell us the genesis of this book specifically.
So it's obviously two stories running parallel. The domestic story of Natalie Dixon actually came a long time ago to me. After A Quiet Storm was published, I worked on my next novel and I titled it The Flight of Venus. And The Flight of Venus is a magic trick that Harry Houdini used to do. It's basically his disappearing woman trick.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to write this story about a woman who who tries to disappear after being in a violent relationship. And it wasn't sold. Big surprise.
We all
And
have one. We
yeah,
all have one.
oh, I have a lot.
No,
But
but this is the thing, Rachel. Only talk about the one.
oh yeah, that one. But for those writers out there, keep
Right.
everything
Because
because
you
then
can take it for parts.
because the problem is I didn't know how to write the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I kept it, but it stayed here. It's like I want to write this domestic abuse story. It was a subject close to me that it's like I have to write this story. I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm gonna get to it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and as I was getting closer and closer to learning how to write a procedural and saying to myself, I actually want to be a crime fiction writer. And that's when Amazon created the Kindle program, and
Mm-hmm.
I self-published two books that I thought were great, but it was getting me closer and closer and closer until I came up with Land of Shadows. And so I had to learn to write a procedural with Land of Shadows. And then I wrote They All Fall Down, which was not a procedural. And I now had my foot in both worlds to,
Mm-hmm.
figure out, oh, I can create I can put this domestic story into the bones of a procedural now that I want to do that. I didn't want to give this story to Lou because I wanted a woman who had issues and
And Lou, just to be clear for the folks who are just coming in
yes,
to Rachel's career late, Lou was a detective that Rachel wrote 3 books about, right?
or
Four
yeah,
books about. Go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. And so I wanted her to be scared. Lou's not scared. I wanted her to be like woefully um unprepared. Lou never goes anywhere unprepared.
Right.
I wanted her to
Like a
have,
Boy Scout.
yeah, yeah. I wanted her to have a past and to be able to bring her bias to her work. Lou does that, yes,
Mhm.
but there's something about um, being in bad relationships that color everything you do. And I wanted Gray to have that kind of push pull. Should I look for this woman or should I help her? Or what's
Mhm.
going on here? And even her boss says, you have to see past what's happened to you to help this person. If she needs help, we'll help her, but you got to be nice to your client.
Right. You're on the job.
You're on the job.
Right.
And, we all do that. In my day job, I write reports and thank you letters to, donors who I don't like ideologically.
Or personally.
It's like, he did that. I don't like that. But my job is to write the freaking letter.
Right.
So I write the freaking letter. And so, yeah, I think, and now she's gone kind of encapsulates everything I've learned about writing and just life in general.
Well, I mean, it's interesting what you talk about, because you're writing about a private detective whose allegiances turn basically scene to scene between client and person they are pursuing. So they are trying to find this woman for their client. They begin to think that the client is the bad person and the person they're pursuing is a good person. And then that shifts back and forth, for about 360 pages.
Yeah. Yes.
Where you're not sure who the good person is.
Because that is life.
Because that is life.
That is life.
And
you think,
I mean, it's a very sophisticated choice that you're making. And it's a hard one, because we are conditioned as readers to be like, you are working for the client.
Yeah.
In these books.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, Rachel, why you do
that? because I mean, I'm thinking about my journals that I kept as a kid. And you remember those times when you thought you were someone's best friend, and then you find out that you weren't invited to, World on Wheels or whatever thing.
Sorensen.
Yeah.
Sorensen.
Oh, really?
I hope you're watching. I'm famous now.
But it broke your heart because, you're wearing matching t-shirts, airbrush t-shirts, and you're posing in pictures. It's like, that's, that was your girl until you find out, no, she's not.
Right.
Or, those women who unfortunately are with partners who they love and they want to start these families. And now they're buried under, oil vats or fields or whatever.
Right.
I mean, we say it all the time. Oh, that guy? I thought that guy was nice. I thought that guy, he watched my dog that one time. He took out my trash cans and put them back when we were away. Because everyone and no one's pure. Everyone and no one is dishonest in some ways. And we're constantly moving goalposts for each other. We'll accept it in that person, but we won't accept it in that person, kind of thing. And so I wanted her to go back and forth. I wanted the reader to go back and forth, because we do that all the time. And it's exhausting and it's terrifying, because at one point you just have to trust somebody's word. And the one time you do that, I have one of my cousins, a distant cousin, she was in a relationship with this guy, and we all met him, and he seemed fine. He wasn't nothing exceptional, but he seemed to love her, and he treated her well. And we got a call late one night that he had stabbed her like 50 times and had left her to die on
my God.
And she pretended to be dead so that he'd leave. And that's when she called 911.
Oh my God.
Right? It's like, him? He never really talked, and he seemed nice, and he was a little guy, and he nearly killed her.
Oh
and
my God.
Here we are, right? And so that sense of being uncertain, of always kind of having a foot on the ground when you're dealing with people, I wanted that all throughout the book.
The other thing that I think you do in all your books, but specifically in this one too, is that you really play games emotionally with setting, by altering the way people are based in really the town that they're in. So, I mean, we all know that people act like assholes when they go to Vegas.
Yes. Yes.
And so you've got a bunch of Vegas stuff. You got some stuff in Alabama, Oakland, all over the place. And then also in specifically in different parts of LA, which I think is fascinating, because you have all of these scenes at the UCLA Medical Center where a character like the doctor Ian, who's either the bad guy or the good guy, you find out about page 360. Where he is he's a god, he is a god. And he's exactly what you want if you ever have to go to UCLA Medical Center to have something done.
Yes.
But then you get him out of that medical center and he's driving around in his Porsche and he's talking on his cell phone, and he's that person that you would drive over in the middle of the street.
Yes, you would. And then back up.
And then back up. And so can you talk a little bit about like your theory of setting as it relates to your characters?
Yes. UCLA, I am a grateful patient. They saved my life. They saved my baby's life. It's a place where, great discoveries are made. It's a place where people are born and die. I mean, famous deaths like, Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, 5150. It's a great seat of learning. And with any kind of university setting, you have very, very smart people who are looked upon with regard. But then, like you just said, take them out and there's regular people and they're assholes and you hate them. You love Ian when he's standing over you and saving your life.
Right.
But oh my goodness. The same with the city at large, Los Angeles at large. There's fires going on, in the book, as they are right now. Right. And that makes all of us kind of scratchy, and not just scratchy because of our eyes and our asthma and all the rest of it, but irritated and uncertain and off kilter some. And so
it's a low grade anxiety that's always there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's a hint of danger.
Right? Yeah. But at the same time that LA is scaring the hell out of us, we are finding comfort in that restaurant in Doolin's over there with the great soul food, and in the tacos, and for some in the place that sells, that makes vegan kale chips. There's comfort there, and there are lots of places to eat. And Greg goes around place to place seeking either comfort or racing from anxiety of all the things that LA, the traffic. There's scenes where she's sitting in traffic, and I've sat in traffic and the guy in the car next to me is kind of looking at me. And if I'm wearing a skirt, we'll be doing like this to see if he can see, right. And I'm just driving, and you're constantly doing that. And I have her doing that. I have her looking over her shoulder after finding comfort in food, so yes, LA is perfect and imperfect. And in like the first chapter, I say it's like Barbara Streisand's nose and Marilyn Monroe's mole. It's right. These ugly, beautiful things about, Southern California that I love. And
I tell you, I would have murdered a $1 taco after reading and a margarita.
Man.
Folks, look, if you're stuck in your houses and you're in some place that has crappy Mexican food, my advice to you is don't read Rachel's new book until like more stuff is open, because you will be craving tacos in a real visceral, sort of atavistic kind of way.
Yes. Cookies. And one of my actually favorite lines I wrote, I can actually say I like this line, is when she's visiting with the pastor of Isabel's church, and he has these plate of cookies, and she says, she shouldn't, but you can't say no to cookies from one of God's ushers, because food. Gray being a child from the foster care system, her foster moms weren't that great, but they did feed her. And so she associates food with some type of love. Mm-hmm. And so just like, the city, food is one of those things that, you kind of turn to that make you anxious, because even the food they fed her gave her the shit sometimes, but it's still food. It's still some sort of, they're giving her something. And I wanted Gray to be a character who always is seeking something to make her feel like she's whole.
Do you, this is maybe a question to make me feel better. Do you look at the world like you are a detective now, or a crime fighter? Like, I get in trouble because I apparently have no situational awareness. And so I will be surprised by something going on in the world, and my lovely wife will say, well, you, Michael Weston from Burn Notice, didn't notice all of the things that were going on. Yeah.
hitman, FBI
Yeah.
agent, don't see anything. Do you have that focus?
I do, and it's exhausting sometimes. I do, especially because I have a 16-year-old daughter.
Right.
And so that all, if I wasn't a writer, I would still kind of be that kind of vigilant. But especially now that, I'm writing stories about bad things happening to people,
Right.
yes, I'm constantly looking around my situation, my environment to see, what's going on. I mean, we are victims in this house of crime. About, I would say, 2006 or 7 or so. Our neighbors across the way, they were redoing their house, so our house was kind of vulnerable without having a house beside it, and we left a window open. Well, not all the way open, but we didn't have the safety thing on, and it was the window without an alarm sensor.
Right.
And I was sick, and on a Thursday morning, I got up to go get my BlackBerry from the living room. Yeah,
Your
that's how old it
BlackBerry.
was. And I'm sitting on the bed because I'm like, I'm not going to work. And I'm tapping on my BlackBerry that I'm not going to work. And our bedroom window looks out to our den door. So if someone leaves the den, I can see that. And so I'm sitting on the bed and someone leaves the den.
Oh God.
And it's like, well, I'm still like NyQuil
Right.
hung over. And I turned to my husband who's still sleeping, like, did my brother come last night? Even though I'm like, he's in Vegas.
Right.
But I wasn't that out. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, and that's when it dawned. It's like, and I yelled, someone's in our house. And he hops up in his Clipper jerseys and tighty whities and grabs the machete underneath our bed. LA, you don't have, and he runs out yeah, I know, right? He runs out with a machete in his underwear and Clippers jersey because someone was in the house. I called 911, grab our 3-year-old daughter at the time, call the cops. They're there with a helicopter in 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm yelling into the phone, don't shoot my husband. He's in a red Clipper jersey and underwear. And
holding a machete.
With a machete, don't shoot him. So, they don't catch him, but his footprints were all over our couch. He stole every electronics that we had in the house. I had been wandering the house, getting my purse and my BlackBerry, and I could have run into him, while I'm sick and whatever.
Right.
And so after that, especially, it's like, okay, it can actually be in my home. I'm very much aware of, making sure that our doors are locked and making sure the windows are closed and all. Yeah. So yeah, for a very long, answer to your question, yes, I am. And at the same time, and I say this too, as a woman, we're all kind of bred to be careful. I mean, I don't know what woman didn't grow up hearing her mom or dad or whoever say, oh, you're wearing a dress or a skirt, go put some shorts on underneath that skirt. I did this thing with my husband once when we were talking about the differences in just day-to-day life between men and women. And I asked him, it's like, tell me about your journey going home.
Right.
And he's like, this is when we actually went into the office. I get my keys and my wallet and I walk to my car, then I just drive home. And I'm like, well, for a woman, you get your purse, you make sure you have your keys in your hand, you put your key between your thumb like this, just in case. You walk to the garage and you make sure that no one's following you. Then you look in your car and make sure in the back seat that no one's in the back seat. Then you drive home and you make sure no one's following you, because that guy who's in the car next to you looking up your skirt may follow you. But if he's not, you drive home, you make sure you lock the door, you make sure you have your key out, you put it in, you open up the door, you make sure no one's following you, you lock your door, and then you're home. So our journeys are totally different than each other. And so, yes, that's all reflected in my work because that's what life is for us.
I mean,
now throw in, being Black in Los Angeles and trying to get home. Yeah.
You don't know who to trust ever.
No.
And I mean, and this all permeates through the new book in a way that,
like you said, I think it took you your entire career to get to the point to write this book, because it really is the sum of all your fears,
Yes. Yes, it is.
in a non-Tom Clancy kind of way.
Which I have up there somewhere.
But I think that it makes it a really unique book for this time, because the things that you're doing is you are tapping into this sort of larger anxiety. You are tapping into this cultural anxiety. But you're also dealing with technological anxiety and the idea that you can't disappear, or can you? Like, how hard is it to disappear now if you really want to? These are all these big sort of thematic things that you are really personifying with not just your hero, but all of your presumed villains. And we won't spoil who the villains are and who the good people are, because that really is the great joy of the book. Is it's not a chess match, it's like checkers, but everything's the same color.
Yeah.
That was good. Let me write that one down. It's like checkers, but everything's the same color. That was good.
Yeah.
Well, let's turn over to get some questions here. So folks, if you have a question, I see that we already have some down there in the Q&A part. Type into the Q&A section and we're going to pull it up. So I'm going to do that right now.
Dun, dun, dun.
Let's start here with Tom G, who is a graduate of the MFA program at UC Riverside.
Hi, Tom G.
What is the best book of yours to start with, Rachel?
I would say this one.
I agree. I mean, it really
it's
everything. It does all your things.
Yeah, it has everything. The the suspense that of other books, and then the procedural of the other books. So start with "And Now She's Gone." Yeah.
Plus, it's always nice to get the new book. You get the accumulation of all of Rachel's talent all in one place.
And then you'll say, gotta go back.
Siobhan, I hope I'm not wrecking the pronunciation of your name. I would love to know more about your morning writing routine. Also, please tell us about your work with the MWA.
So, my morning writing routine. I get up at 4:58 every morning.
Never call me. Never ever call me.
Hey, Todd, what you doing? You what? Part of that is, we have a very old golden retriever and she has to pee. So I'm going to be up anyway. But also I am fresh in the morning. I started work early when I had my child, because, you have to either pick her up or go to parent teacher conference or soccer practice or whatever. So I always needed to get out of work, which meant I needed to go into work earlier. And so when I did go in, I'd get to work for 6 o'clock, but now I get up at 5 and I write until 7 o'clock. For about 7:30, I kind of ease into work. And that means, reading the headlines, going into Twitter, seeing what new hell is awaiting me.
Seeing who I'm mocking.
Yeah, I do not get on Twitter until after I get writing done, or I don't do any electronic thing until then. And then I maybe try and get something done at lunchtime. That may be answering emails, that may be, thinking about more writing. And then in the evening, if I don't have events or anything, I try and do, again, something that could be light research or transcribing notes. I write all my first drafts longhand. So
oh my gosh.
I sit and type things in. And then I'm in bed at 9:15 because I've been up since 4:58. And I do that for the weekends too. I get up at 5 and I write till about 9. Every weekend. And it's a little slower than some novelists who get to do it, full time. But, I don't have to worry about eating because my day job pays for all my bills, so there's that. And
I thought you were going to say you have a feeding tube.
Not yet. It's not like, well, not yet. And also, I write for my day job. And so I have a writing muscle. I don't get to say, I don't feel like writing these reports or these letters today. It's like, I need to do this. And so my writing muscle keeps me, ready to go. I do miss my commute because that's where I spent a lot of time thinking about what I'm about to write.
Yeah.
But now it's gone. And so it takes me, unfortunately, like 20 minutes to get all warmed up. And those 20 minutes is, it's bad writing. But
Driving time really is like, that's where I solve a lot of my
yeah,
problems.
see? Yeah. And it's gone now. And, liminal space is very important for a creative process because you do get to kind of mold things around and kick it around and try it out some. And, you're also inspired by the craziness around you. I mean, we all see interesting things in cars as we're driving to work, and it's all gone. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just even, I think it was 2 weekends ago, I had to write a piece and I was like, I just got to go drive, from one end of town. I mean, the benefit of living in the desert here, and those of you that are watching know this, is like, with no tourists, this is the best place on the planet to live because you can drive from one end of the valley to the next without getting on the freeway. And it takes you about 25 minutes, and it's beautiful and everything's blooming. And if you're lucky, you can stop by a Starbucks and get a Frappuccino. But I really need that sort of time with the really good stereo in my car, driving with the windows down and just having that thing. It's so true.
I may have to start doing that. I mean, the longer.
Come to the desert. We have a guest room.
Yes. 5:00 in the morning.
You have a hazmat suit on. It's fine. You can come stay with us. And what is it that you do with the Mystery Writers of America?
I was on the national board, but now I'm rolling off the Southern California board. I am there to help, bring a voice there that is sorely needed. One of being an African-American woman on the West Coast. So that means being on committees for anthologies and judging contests, to just being a resource for other writers, especially writers of color. So whatever they have me do, I do. I show up.
You're a fixer.
Organization. Yeah, I'm like Olivia Pope. With the trench coat.
Let's see here. Jane Bark has a good question. Drawing from your personal life, has anyone recognized themselves as characters, or are they compilations? The best way to make sure that no one ever recognizes themselves is just say, so-and-so, who was the ugliest person I'd ever met in my entire life.
That's not me.
That's not me.
No. I would say a lot of them are compilations of people. My friends know, back when we actually got to hang out, that if they do something interesting, they will see it again. In a book, there's in Skies of Ash, there's an instance where one of Lou's friends is doing pole dance class and she has a recital. And I didn't know that there were these things like recitals for pole dancing class until I was hanging out with friends, and she handed invitations to see her pole dance recital. And so I'm like, that's going to go in the book. So they know that pieces of them can be found in different characters. I did have an instance where a family member thought I was talking about her, and it made her very upset. So upset that she wrote a multi-page letter to me saying how she was angry that I'd done that to her. And I'm like, everybody has a pet that they bury in the backyard.
With the machete.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, people think, that I'm directly copying. I don't. Right. I don't.
See,
that's interesting to me.
This is the benefit that I have of coming from a family of writers, is that everything that goes on in our family, one of us is going to steal for content. So it's really a competition to find out when we get to use things. Yeah. Like when we have large family gatherings, if something interesting happens, we have to call it and say, oh, that's mine. I get to tell that story. Or that's mine.
Tips.
Yeah. I mean, it only makes sense,
Yeah. That is
and that way too, no one's upset if it appears in my book and my brother's book at the same time. They're like, well, that's how we know it's true.
Yeah. No, it's right. And so, like with all fiction, you take a little of this and a little of that. In the book that's coming out next year, it's like my oldest niece and my daughter mixed up together to become Mickey, the protagonist for These Toxic Things. So yeah.
So are you going to continue writing this character, or are you going to continue doing standalones? What's your plan?
Probably standalones for the moment. I love standalone land, primarily because you can talk about anything you want in a standalone. I mean, you move from one awful thing to that awful thing over there, and you don't have to tie it to someone's past. I would, eventually like to get back to Gray, because there are lots of things I want her to uncover about herself and about the people around her. And she's, great, great territory for that kind of, still the identity thing, and helping women who are in tight situations.
And we won't spoil it, but she has a romantic entanglement in this book that I am frankly very interested in.
Ooh la la sassoon. Yes. And who knows what that's going to be, because they're both, kind of in difficult situations themselves. When someone knows your past, that can be a great thing, but then it's like, oh, he actually knows, so I can't bullshit. So it's not as freeing as it can be. So yeah, there's plenty of room for discovering more of Gray.
I think this is also why a lot of people have started to polygraph people on their dates. Get that information out very, very early.
I'm glad I am not dating right now, because everything I'm talking about is like, oh, he's crazy. Is he crazy? And the one that you don't think is crazy is the crazy one. So it's a constant. What's the game? The scammers, not necessarily the shell game, but I guess it is the shell game.
3-card Monty.
Yeah. So,
yes. Well, folks, go rush out to your bookstores, or actually go to bookshop.org, Mystery Inc.'s bookshop right now, and order yourself a copy, if you haven't already, of Rachel Howzell Hall's brand new book, And Now She's Gone, which has just come out. Great reviews. You now know Rachel personally. You'd already know me personally, and I wouldn't lie to you about this. I mean, I'll lie to you, but not about this, not about books. It's a wonderful book, and I'm always so excited and thrilled for you for all your success. I'm a big fan. I'm your number one fan on the planet, perhaps. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all for coming here tonight. If you missed anything, we're going to have this it's being recorded right now. It will be up on YouTube in about a week. You can share it with your friends and family. You can play it on election night if you get bored, or at the holidays if we still have those. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful night.